I wish I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, because sometimes you get into some conversations and it's like, oh man, right? Like it's the guests can be good. Like you and I are having a good conversation, but there's guests that are just like, all right, so you have to somehow figure out whether you're gonna just bail on the conversation, just be okay, thanks a lot, let's get out of here. Ask them a general question, like, okay, thanks, man, that's great. Or are you just gonna try and break down the wall and get into some more detail? Depends who they are. There's musicians out there that just don't want to talk to you, right? It's like that's the frustrating part, because I want the hits and I want the crowd to listen to that, and I want them to be happy with it, right? And sometimes it's just not my fault that I can't get that out of them, right?
Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope you've been having a glorious week. I most certainly have been. Before we jump into today's episode, I would just like to ask you to follow the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I'd really appreciate it if you were to rate it and write a review. Why do I want you to do that? Well, you have to imagine that when someone is looking for a new podcast to listen to invest their time in, what do? They scroll down, they look at those ratings, they read the reviews. If those ratings and reviews are positive, they will most probably give that podcast a chance. So by you writing a review for the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, you could actually help sway someone to become a brand new Vox and Hops head, and that would be something that I would truly appreciate. Now, today's episode is an epic crossover episode with George Panayi of the Meet Me for Coffee podcast. I've known George for a long time, and it was about time that we did an episode like this, so I'm stoked about it. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox and Hops episode number 297.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm with George Panayi of Meet Me for Coffee podcast. George, how are you doing? This is a great little crossover episode. We're going to hang out, talk about coffee, talk about craft beer, talk about metal, talk about podcasting, and then we're going to drop this episode on each of our podcasts. I love doing this, and I'm greatly appreciated that we get to connect right now. George, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, the Vox and Hops thing is definitely something that I'm really digging. I have the glass right here.
Hell yes.
I like the LED light blasting on it, but yeah, you know, the crossover thing is very cool because it helps you promote your podcast on other people's podcasts, and especially if you're an awesome singer from a band called Cryptopsy, it's kind of cool, man. It's really cool. There's a bit of a backstory with me and Matt, and so I used to be a promoter back in my hometown, and I booked this old band called 3 Mile Scream. I still have that record. I still have it, and I also have a shirt somewhere, but it probably doesn't fit me at all. At a skate park in Woodstock, Ontario, and
dude, I remember that show.
Yeah, and what happened was, I can hear that nice beer pouring into there. What happened was it was at a skate park, and there was so much reverb, and oh man, I wish I would have got like a louder freaking PA, but at the same time, there were other great bands too, like Endast, I think played. Did they play? Yeah,
they 100% did. Yes.
And I couldn't afford to pay for Diecast, who was on tour with Endast. And I really regret that because I became a very big fan of Diecast. And they were in like Guitar Magazine and everything, like the advertisement for that record with, I forgot what the song was, Singled Out. That was their big song. And they came out with that one record, Internal Revolution, with like Fractured and Fade Away, and man, just reminiscing on a lot of that stuff, you know. And I'm really thankful that, you know, I said that many times to you that we still talk. It's a very, I've always I've followed what you have done. You went from that band. You played in a band called, is it Era of or Era Is?
Yeah, that's correct. The Era of, yeah.
Era of, yeah. And and then Cryptopsy and Worship Your Demons. That was the record, right?
That is the first record, the
Yeah.
Unspoken King.
Yeah, the Unspoken King. That was a wicked record. At first, like when who was the original singer of Cryptopsy? Lord.
The original singer is Lord Worm.
Yeah, Lord Worm was a really good vocalist, and then it's like, oh man, like Matt's gonna front this band. All right, and
That's what everyone thought.
It really blindsided me because you're doing the era of, and then all of a sudden, holy shit, right? And
chronologically, it goes 3 Mile Scream into Cryptopsy, and then after the Unspoken King, I started the era of.
Okay, so this is why social media sucks, because I can't really follow you. I am having a beer right now, craft beer called Joe Blo.
Exactly. Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my friends, talking about their lives, music, and craft beer. What beer are you going to be drinking on your side tonight, George?
It's called Joe Blo. It's from Joseph Bloor Brewery, established in 1830.
Wow.
From Toronto. I found this is really cool. It's kind of funny. Joe Blo. Their slogan is pairs well with beer drinkers. It's a Bohemian Pilsner. And you can check them out, Joe Blo, Joseph Bloor Brewery.com. But it also says the company's from Toronto, but it's brewed in St. Thomas, Ontario.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like contract brewing out somewhere else. That's very interesting. Pours out nice. Bohemian Pilsner, which means that it's not a standard Pilsner. They're probably doing something out of the box with it, and they don't want to get fucking trashed and annoyed by all the negative comments. Oh, before we go, can I swear on your podcast? Because I can swear on my podcast. Perfect. They want to get hit with a bunch of negative fucking comments on Untapped by saying this is not a Pilsner. So that's why they're calling it a Bohemian Pilsner, I would imagine.
What about you? What are you drinking?
On my side, I'm drinking something very special. This is something from Brewtal North America. This is Beyond Creations and one of my favorite breweries, Overhop Canada's brew that they created together for Brewtal North America, where I dropped 22 collaborative brews across North America back in June. This is Entre Stout Et Mirage, and to honor you, the Meet Me for Coffee theme, it's a true crossover. This is a stout with Brazilian coffee. It also has that Ambunana wood, which is a wood that they age. I don't remember, a Brazilian wood that they age stuff in, and it gives it a strange cinnamony, chocolatey flavor. It's like the perfect adjunct for a stunk. It's the perfect adjunct for a stout because it brings all these other flavors into the brew.
You should do a stunt right now and have a sip of that thing.
Yes.
Look at that thing. Wow. I love these glasses. Thank you so much. This is so cool. This is
They're perfect. They're from my 1-year anniversary party where I interviewed Lord Worm at Turbo House, actually. And it was a blast. And I've been enjoying them ever since. Cheers. That coffee, it smells like creamy. It's amazing. There's cinnamon too from the Ambunana.
I really like this, actually. It's very smooth.
Ooh, it's amazing. It's like the coffee bite, the malty, like caramel from the malts. The Ambunana brings like all these weird extra caramel, cinnamon, spicy flavors. It's really fantastic, and it's a low ABV stout, which is really cool because they wanted to do that for summer. 6% ABV, absolutely delicious. George, do you remember your very first beer
that I've ever tasted?
Mm-hmm.
It was Carlsberg.
It's probably the best lager in the world. That was their slogan back in the day.
Yeah, Carlsberg. I know you're not supposed to be doing this when your son is young, but my dad would always give me a little sip of his beer with my food, and he drank Carlsberg and Carlsberg Light, and that was my first sip. The first time I ever went a bit too far drinking beer, it was with a company called Brick Brewery, who became Waterloo Brewing I'm in Kitchener-Waterloo. And now these guys have expanded. They own Laker, and they own rights to Land Shark, and I believe some Seagrams. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but they become very big. And so that was the first beer, the Brick Brew beer was the original. The amber one is the one I firstly got messed up on. And I say that with pride because it's cool because it's from here. Like it's huge. And just trying different beers for me. I know you probably always try different ones. There is a point to be made. If you live in Montreal, people are always like, hey man, the smoked meat. I love Montreal smoked meat. But no one ever thinks that the Quebecers in this country, the people from Montreal, the people who live in Quebec, have anything else other than smoked meat and poutine or however the hell you fucking say that.
You got it. It's poutine.
The most mind-blowing thing is that there's so many breweries in Quebec that just blows my mind because like I've seen the beers you've tried on your show. There's different ones. It's like, wow, this one's from Quebec. That one's from Quebec. You know, it's all local. Here in Ontario on my birthday, which was 2 weeks ago.
Well, happy
birthday. 33. Yeah. I'm still, I got the white hair going. That's why I shave my head now. And I just have a nice luscious head of hair. But yeah, man. So I went on a brewery tour and it was so cool to see all these breweries that I had no clue existed because you never see them on the shelf. Here, I don't know how it is.
It's very complex to get through the LCBO doors, from what I've been told.
And LCBO is just in Ontario, right?
That is correct, yeah.
And in Montreal, in Quebec.
None of the craft beer breweries, or very few of them, fuck with trying to get into the SAQ, which is our liquor store commission. It's very, very complex. So they just go direct to the consumer. Well, we have dépanneurs. We have a lot of craft beer specialty stores and dépanneurs, convenience stores that do stock craft beer, local craft beer. So that helps. And a lot of the consumers go directly to the brewery.
That's awesome. Like I wish like now we can go directly to the brewery, have a beer, grab some beer. We were hoping to be able to drink it. Just going down to the corner store like Max or Becker's, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if you guys have that there. It's like a different world. You know, I go into Quebec, I drive in right over the border from Ottawa, and it's the signs in French, and it's like you can't turn left on a green light or something.
On the island of Montreal, you can't turn right on a red light. That is something that happens here. It's for traffic reasons.
I enjoyed my time in Montreal, man. I had 2 nights there. I enjoyed it, and I would hope that I can come back. I think I'm coming back in April of 2022, if everything's well. To see a musician. I forget what it was, but who it was. It's a lady. She plays like classical music and stuff on the violin or something like that. Anyway, it's my wife's cup of tea. I bought her.
Is it Jarem?
It might be. Yeah.
I fucking love her. If it's her, we might be at the same show.
Okay.
Because I love her, and so does my wife very much. Back to that show in Woodstock, I have many anecdotes from that night. First off, we showed up and we were like, where the fuck are we?
Yeah.
At an arena. It was like an arena skate park.
Yeah.
It was big. And then we were like, there was kids just coming out of the cornrows coming to this show. There was a lot of kids there, and we were very impressed. And the gig was fun. And then we went to a motel afterwards with NDAS. We each got rooms in side-by-side rooms. And I've toured the world. And this was by far one of the worst fucking motels that I've ever slept in. There was an iron mark just on the carpet, like burnt. And then in Endast's room, because they were next to us, their shower, they had like freshly redone the shower, but they didn't put a drain in. What it looked like they had done is like, here's the drain, and they took a hammer and they just smashed the hole, and that was it. Those are my 2 anecdotes from Woodstock.
Wow. So yeah, I would never have known that.
Fun memories of, like, honestly, and we've spoken about them recently. The 3 Mile Dudes. It's like if had you not booked that show, we would have not had these memories.
I was talking to Mike Marino a few months ago. He's a rep for Ibanez now or something like that.
He was a rep for Ibanez. He's moved on to other companies at this point.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. That's awesome. And his uncle was Frank.
His uncle is Frank Marino. Yeah.
Wow. And Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush. Yeah, there's so many great memories, playing in a band when you first start playing a band. I remember me playing a band, you practice with your friends and you go play and then your arm seizes up because like you get too excited. Um, and then I used to play in a band called Soul Heavy and play in a band called Age of Kings. It's so weird because every time I play in a band, it's with the same people, almost the same lineup because we're all friends. And it's always like, you show up at somebody's house one day. It's like, yo, man, I got a riff. You start playing around. Right? I'll play drums and you play guitar, whatever. It's like, oh, that sounded pretty good. You want to come over next week? Sure. And then all of a sudden John's there and John sings. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we should find somebody else to play, guitar. It's like, okay, cool. Jim, you want to play guitar? Yeah, sure. So Jim's there, and then it's the other guy and this guy and that guy. And it's like, then you have a song. And then you have another song. And it's like, okay, well, this is pretty cool. Right now I don't have a band. I'm just way too busy, but obviously life hits you and, you got to really have time for that stuff. Right. It's very,
every day is a calculation of hours and how you're going to fill those hours. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Especially like, having a commitment, just like having your show, Vox and Hops, and my show. I have to manage my time wisely. I have to make sure that everything's scheduled properly and that I remember that it's going to be scheduled on that day. And I have to make a note of it and I have to prepare and I have to try and do other things all while trying to shape my life and seeing what free time I have, knowing that if I sacrifice yesterday's, even like I had a few drinks with the neighbors, that I might get behind. Right. So, where I want to take my show, and is somewhere where like I wanted to have guests and have a jam-packed lineup of not just familiar faces, but people who are up and coming and entrepreneurs. Like I had a guy who had he has the steel straw business going on now. That's pretty cool. Like I have another guy that I just released a show maybe like 3 weeks ago, and he has a software that verifies people on dating sites. So you're not.
Oh yeah.
There's all these bots and
there's no trolls.
Yeah.
Are getting catfished.
Yeah, and then you also have guests like Sam Roberts, who I absolutely love, and guys from Nonpoint, and I had talked to a guy from Pink Floyd and Megadeth, and so it's kind of cool to mesh everything together. I know you mostly do people who are vocalists and guitar players, and
my only stipulation, and at first when I started Vox and Hops, the idea was it would just be singers, and I would only talk to singers. And then I booked my first guest, and he was a guitarist, and I was like, okay, this doesn't work, and I felt constrained and was like, how am I going to only talk to singers? So we changed the idea of Vox to represent the conversation.
Yeah.
Cool. in the theme of the show. So the only thing that I want to keep and to make sure it stays for Vox and Hops as a theme for the guests is that they're metal. Either they're metal or they're into craft beer. I did a whole bunch of exceptions earlier this year where I spoke to a bunch of local breweries, and they weren't necessarily metalheads, but they were local breweries that I loved, and I wanted to talk to them. So those are my stipulations.
Hey, keep it metal, man. people get thrown off. I feel with my guests, because I will go interview Steve DiGiorgio and Gene Hogland, and then people are like, who the hell are these guys, right? You interview Parmalee, who's a big country star, Kenny Aronoff, and it's like, who's Gene Hoglan and who's this, right? It's like, man, you got to read up on things. People are so close-minded sometimes, right? There are other podcasts that are more conversational based, and I feel that the podcast industry is just kind of here in Canada is just really just starting.
Absolutely.
We are the front runners, you and I, and other people amongst us, our peers, for something great that's about to happen here. And that's why Spotify is taking the reins and bringing on Joe Rogan and all those other big podcasts because they really believe in the future of the podcast industry. Because now, I mean, anybody can have a podcast, right? Anybody can have it. It's so easy to start. But I always say I try and help people launch their podcasts. And sometimes, I do some seminars when I have time, obviously. But they always ask me like, I have this idea for a podcast. Okay, cool. Like, how are you going to put it together? That's why I always ask them. Anybody can have a podcast, but is it good? Like, is your podcast good? Because like, there's a lot of people who don't have the ear or have the budget, and that's okay. But you want your podcast to sound awesome because people are going to remember the audio quality. Like I listen to a lot of audio quality, right? I was a producer, was in radio. Like I like to hear things like properly, right? I don't want to hear like some person in a distance on a microphone or off their phone, or I just don't like that, right? It turns people off. For me, it does, at least. So the quality of your product is very, very, very crucial. But being said, that it is very easy to start a podcast. You can go to Anchor or any other site and subscribe and just pop up Zoom like we do now and do it depending on who you want to talk to. There's a lot of different ways to do a show, right? You can do like a show on, metal music specifically, coffee specifically, would be pretty cool. People do sports, and now, Howard Stern was always saying, and I always bring this point up, and I hope I'm not boring you, Matt, but
absolutely not.
Howard Stern said the podcast industry would never, ever be a big thing. And he's been proven wrong, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure a lot of people know this. There are people who have left his staff and started their own podcast, right? There are companies like iHeartRadio and Bell, and I don't know if they're the same company anymore, but I don't pay attention. I don't pay attention to radio anymore. Like I don't listen to that.
I don't listen to radio at all.
I find my bands organically. And I invest my time in listening to indie bands, and I'm on satellite radio sometimes, but it's more just like listening to some Howard Stern. Yeah, I still support the guy, but he's been proven wrong, right? Joe Rogan
are here to stay.
Yeah. And so
there's definitely a market of people that enjoy listening to them.
There's one called the Escaping Denver. And I heard it on like the advertisement on like the radio when I was in Walmart. It's about like the secret underneath Denver airport where it's like tunnels and UFOs and whatever. And I like that shit, man. And there's also ones about like was it a mind bender or something like that? I forget what it is, but he was a guest off Joe Rogan. His name's Sean Carroll. He's like a professor or a teacher from University of California, and talks about like different dimensions and the multiverse. I like listening to that stuff, man. I like hearing people interview others, and I like hearing people who know what they're talking about. It's like it helps you learn something new, and it's become a tool for me, especially if I'm interviewing somebody new. I just look up if they've ever been on podcasts before.
That's true. Yeah.
So I listen to them. So it's easier for me to study, right? It's great. So then that the background information, because some people ask me personally, like, how'd you know that, right? How'd you know that, right? It's like, well, I heard it. You talk about it, right? So it's a great way to study. If you're a host and you want to start your own podcast, listen to other podcasts.
It's a good idea.
But enough about me, man. Like this Vox and Hops podcast is so cool with the different beer drinking, and I drink different coffees and stuff on my show, but sometimes it's pretty late. And
yeah,
when you're bothering people around 11, 12 o'clock at night to do something, and everybody's just so tired, it can get pretty hard. You have to wake up for work the next day and at 5 o'clock or whatever. But there are some great coffees out there. And they do mix with some beer sometimes, which is great.
It's delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely delicious. Let's talk about podcasting in general. Why exactly did you start Meet Me for Coffee? What is your origin story there?
Okay, so I did about a decade in radio. Wasn't really fitting what I wanted to accomplish in my career. And I realized a lot of these bands, we spoke about this off the air. Damn, this beer is pretty good. We spoke about this off the air, and a lot of these bands aren't given the chance to be on the radio. I was hoping, and I like Alanis Morissette. I like Katie Lang. I like, Nelly's okay sometimes, but when it's played, or Uptown Funk is good, but when it's played constantly throughout the day and you won't give people the opportunity to be on the radio like it used to be, it could be very, very annoying, right? And hard for bands because they get disregarded. In Canada, we have a stipulation for all radio stations. They have to play 30% of their content every hour has to be Canadian content. And that was established back in the late 1970s by Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who was the father, obviously, of Justin Trudeau. Mm-hmm. And it was in order to help bands get exposure, and help bands, get the ball rolling. And I know we saw Neil Young get on the radio waves here at that time, and it helped a lot of people with their careers. Right now, the way the industry is that you have to pay somebody who has that connection to solicit people, your music, and hopefully you get some money from SOCAN or whatever else takes your royalties or collects them for you at the end of the month. And I don't know what the end game would be anymore.
You go on tour and you sell T-shirts.
Yes. Yeah. I know somebody who went on tour with Five Finger Death Punch with his band. He was opening up. It was like $1,000, a pay to play kind of show.
Wow.
Across Canada. And they had to sell their T-shirts for the same amount as Five Finger Death Punches.
Yeah,
and
price match. Yeah.
$45. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to buy your shirt. I'll buy a Five Finger Death Punch shirt. Yeah. So the story goes on. I left radio. Just didn't work out. Like I was working so much and I wasn't seeing the money and I wasn't happy. I wanted to help out bands. So what I did is I took another job. I started my own show called the World Rock Countdown. I'm sure you probably remember me posting about that stuff, where I found new bands each week, and it became very popular. Like I have a picture back in 2016. Me and Joe Rogan were the top 2 shows in the world. And then what happened was I got some dirty email from a couple of record companies saying that they're going to pursue some legal action against me. And
because you were playing their music.
I had the licensing. I don't understand how this worked. Like I paid for the license, and it's like, oh, well, now you have the license. And they played the music, and then now, like that was a problem after a while. Maybe because I wasn't licensed, I stopped doing the show for that portion of time, and the license expired, and they renewed it, and that's probably when they thought they could just come after me. But so basically, the consensus was like I stopped doing the show. And then around that time, I had a publicist who was kind of like a colleague of mine. I wouldn't call him a friend anymore, but he was one of the old publicists for Paramount. He's like, you want to interview some of my actors? Yeah, okay, sure. Well, I don't have a show for it. So I announced Meet Me for Coffee when I was working in radio on LinkedIn a few years ago. And I was like, let's start talking to people and not at people. Let's have good conversations, right? Let's hear it. Because I used to interview bands and people like Rick Mercer, and I wasn't allowed to just have a full out conversation with them, right? Because
actually just scripted questions.
Yeah.
That they were prepped for? Is that what it was based on?
It would have to be like under 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of like this podcast, right? We would have been done like 20 minutes ago if we were in radio.
5-minute timeline.
Yeah, exactly.
Very easy to create a relationship in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. So
what are you drinking? I'm drinking this. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. Like what a letdown that would have been, like, to interview people or talk to you, and then we have to finish it in 5 minutes, right?
Mm.
But yeah, like, so I decided to take that idea back and do it, and then end up being a kind of like a little slow start. I had Larry Hankin on the show. He's been in Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood, and was it Billy Madison, Breaking Bad, stuff like that, and that kind of helped me. That was like my fifth or sixth or seventh show. Then I was bringing guys on for Pink Floyd, and then Jane's Addiction. Then slowly, like, I had, like, Kenny Aronoff, which is my favorite drummer of all time. Then things started picking up, right? Like, honestly, I can't complain. Like, it feels good to have the onus on you and not rely on other people to do things for you, right? Obviously, we build our teams, but um, whatever happens with the show, I feel better if I go out and accomplish it or try and do it myself than have my reliance on other people who, are restricting me, right? So um the big thing for me is, like, the way the show kind of panned out ended up being, I wanted musicians and actors, and then it's like, okay, what about motivational speakers or relationship experts? And so it ended up kind of like clashing together with the coffee thing, that get down earth, have good conversations over coffee, get to know stuff about, Kenny Aronoff or Kim Coates from Sons of Anarchy that you've never heard before. Or, let's hear what, the bass player from Megadeth likes to drink in the morning. Like this, like, it's so cool, right?
Isn't he has his own coffee, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, and his own wine company, and he's got a lot of his own record label, and this guy, he was helping people out too, right? So um it was a cool show regardless. And I had the drummer of Jane's Addiction, and he was saying that they're working on a new record, and I think I'm the only freaking show in the world that actually has that on tape. Like, that's so cool. But you've had some great guests as well, right? Like, you've had some awesome guests, Sebastian Bach.
Yeah, he was awesome. I've been very, very blessed, very, very lucky to have the chance to sit down with many people that I've connected with over my life, over my career with Cryptopsy, my career with 3 Mile. The only reason I had Randy Blythe of Lamb of God on the show was because when I was in 3 Mile, Randy came to Montreal to produce vocals for Bloodshot Eye.
Yeah, Bloodshot Eye, Shane Ivey.
Yeah, exactly. And because of that, I hung out with Randy back in 2004 or something, when Lamb of God were getting big, but they weren't fucking mammoths as they are now. So when they dropped a brew, I hit him up, and the timing was right, and he had a chat with me. So I'm looking forward to connecting with him again in the future.
Oh,
So,
man,
lots of
freak out.
interesting guests and stuff, but it's just really just connections. I found that the pandemic had a huge impact on Vox and Hops. I'm wondering how the pandemic affected Meet Me for Coffee.
With the pandemic made me. That's what happened. Like, it was like, last year I posted it's like, Happy New Year, everybody. It's been a crappy year for most, but it's been the best year of my life. Like, I had my son in February 2020, and then the show launched in what was in the beginning stages, but in March of 2020. So, like, with all the success of the show and my son and my other kids, like, it's really been a blessing for me to be kind of stuck in the house sometimes. I've had COVID, and I've had to stay home and isolate too in some situations, and yeah, it can be stressful, but I think people now are able to have that relationship kind of renewed, right, with their family, the bond, and we're only hanging out with each other. I like to be home, maybe not all the time, but I know you have children as well, and it can be pretty stressful being at home.
Trying to work from home, trying to do stuff from home,
yeah,
with young children is very, very, very difficult. But
you've had a lot of success this past year, and I've seen it.
Thank you.
I've seen it. Like, even like the hot sauce brand that you're repping?
Yeah, I was
those guys are from London, aren't they?
They are from Thunder Bay, but you mentioned it earlier, Invey the drummer of Inve went on to form with his partner, his wife, Heartbeat Hot Sauce. So it's another connection through music that he was interested in helping the podcast, working with the podcast. I loved his products. It was easy. One of those win-win situations for both of us. But Heartbeat Hot Sauce rules, people.
You put that shit on everything, man. It's good.
I did. I still do. I still have a few kicking around. I did.
It's killer.
I ate some tonight. Honestly, the the pineapple habanero. I had it on my curry that I made right before this chat.
That's awesome. You've done so well, man. You have some beer. You have your merch. You have, the microphone with the I don't know what you call it, the label.
It's called a mic flag, and this is pure my wife Jessica's doing. When I went to Heavy Montreal 2 years ago, I guess at this point, she was like, "You need a mic flag. You can't be backstage doing interviews with all these bands and not have a mic flag." And I went to Heavy Montreal. I've been many times. I played twice. It's a sick festival here in Montreal on Ile Saint-Hélène, which is like an island off of Montreal that they created. It's a man-made island. When they dug the metro system, they didn't know where to put the earth, so they made a fucking island. Wow. And there's an amusement park on it, and that's where there's huge festivals every summer. There's a crazy festival ground. It's amazing. Venco puts all that shit on. Oshiaga, Heavy Montreal, Il Sonic, 77, and I'm forgetting one. But just a killer place. So I went there not to watch shows that year. I was like, I had launched Vox and Hops, and I was like, I'm going to do as many interviews as I can. And I did 19 interviews in 2 days. So I had content for like 3 months after that. I was very, very happy. But I sat in that tent for those 2 days the whole time, just doing interviews back to back. And those were like those 15-minute interviews, which I'm not a fan of. But
so you had your own tent with Vox and Hops on the side?
No. It was like the media tent.
Okay. That's cool.
It is a future goal now that I'm teamed up with Heavy Montreal to have my own tent there.
Yeah, you should. It's
my absolute goal. So a year after that, I teamed up with Heavy Montreal to have episodes presented by Heavy Montreal every week, and that's been happening since then.
Wow, I got to that too, man. That's a great idea. What a sweet idea. That's
just
awesome. Connections,
relationships, building them, fostering communities is something really that we're trying to do. Throughout the pandemic, I started hanging out with people every Thursday called Thirsty Thursdays. It grew into this beautiful, beautiful family. So every Thursday on Zoom from March until now, every Thursday there's Vox and Hops heads that hang out together all across the globe and drink beer together and talk about their lives, and they know each other. And now that the pandemic is subsiding slightly and people can travel and meet up with each other, there are people that have traveled from the United States to Mexico City to hang out, and they've met each other in a Thirsty Thursday virtual hang. There's people that come from Toronto to here all the time. There's people coming from Texas coming up soon. I've met people that are now a part of the Vox and Hops crew. Jerry Monk specifically is my metal architect, I call him. He curates the Vox and Hops Brutal Awakenings playlist every week, and that just happened so naturally because for months he was just sending me new curated bands just for me. He's just a guy that listens to lots of music. He loves it. He's got like a specific attuned ear to music, extreme music, new music, and it was an easy decision to ask him to curate it. He's also a part of my review crew, so I got to the point where I kept forgetting to post my album of the week. So I was like, let's just enlist the help of a few members of the Thirsty Thursday gang. So Whispers from the Void podcast, which is a podcast that was born out of the Thirsty Thursday virtual hang gang, is a dude called Evan from Boston and a dude called Philippe from Quebec City. And they have a podcast and they drop episodes every week, and it was born out of Thirsty Thursdays. So they are a part of the review crew. They do video reviews for Vox and Hops. And then there's Dan from Manitoba, and there's Jimbo from he's an Aussie that lives in Germany. So it's really, really, it's a very cool thing that happened throughout the pandemic. I'm very happy about what Thirsty Thursday has brought Vox and Hops. It's just this beautiful community, and everyone's just there for the love of metal, the love of craft beer, and the love of just being positive and connecting. It's all about relationships.
like during that time, it's been like very, this time it's been very, very hard to, uh, have camaraderie, right? And it's cool that to hear that you're able to do that.
I've hung out with these people more than I've hung out with any of my friends in the past year. And we know each other well. They come to Montreal. I always make an appearance. I always show up to say hi to them, and they're always just so happy. It was Philip's birthday, and I surprised him. I told him I didn't tell him I was coming, and I showed up, and he was like, "Oh my God!" It was just so nice. It's just so nice to meet amazing, talented people that also have the same passions as me. So it's cool. It's like the internet in real life.
Yeah, I mean, like it's cool to hang out with people online. It's not the same.
100% not.
Although you should do it like a massive party and have everybody kind of fly in or meet in
one day, as soon as we can, a true Thirsty Thursday in real life. That would be nice.
I'd like to come to that. That'd be great. That'd be
You
great.
should. A question I always love to ask a fellow podcaster is there an episode, an interview that got away from you that you wish that you can go back and redo?
Well, there's a couple. There's one that I never did.
Yeah.
Stephen Bauer.
No.
So he played Manny in Scarface.
Oh, okay.
And he had agreed to be on my show. So me trying to figure out when he could come on my show, like I was hoping to get that locked down. He agreed to be on the show. And now management kind of like hasn't answered me back, right? Like he loved to be on the show. All right, cool. How about these dates? And I never heard back. Nothing.
Ghosted you.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is crazy, right? Like the guy's such a good actor. He's been in Breaking Bad, Queen of the South, many other movies. And it's like, wow, Manny from Scarface. Like that's one that kind of, ghosted me. But there's a couple that I wish I would have redone. There's a couple I wish I would have never done at all. There are, I did 180 interviews in the last year.
That's a lot, dude.
And so far, like
doubled me, I think.
Yeah. So far, like I only aired probably half of them.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't plan on airing them at all. Right.
Wow.
Just because like sometimes it goes well. Sometimes there's internet issues, and sometimes like it just fucking sucks to talk to them. Right.
Sometimes when you get people like on a press circuit.
Yeah.
That's I'm the more I go, the more I don't want to do those.
Yeah. It's
I'd never fill out those grids that they sent me.
No.
Do you want 9:20, 9:40? I'd write back and say I'm available at this time on this day. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'm fine. There's people that I want to talk to and I'll make time for, but I'm very, very booked and I'm okay with that. And we will connect when the time comes. But to do it like in a press circuit, when someone's already talked to like 8 people before me, I'm not enjoying. I don't enjoy those conversations. I don't feel that the artists do either.
Yeah. It's just so hard for them to enjoy anything, right? Once they get to you, they probably heard the same question over and over again. So
sometimes they're refreshed because it's like, oh, he's not asking about the album.
Yeah.
I will talk about beer. I haven't spoken about beer today at all. I will drink a beer with you.
Yeah, it's really refreshing. I actually had one with, who Andrew Zimmern is?
No.
He's like a big chef. He has like a show called Bizarre Foods where he travels around the world and eats foods that,
normal people don't eat. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like a big interview, man, like 9 o'clock in the morning.
At least it works with the coffee. With the beer, it's harder.
Yeah. No, it doesn't, man. Sometimes, honestly, like I'll be really truthful with you, and this is only going to stay on this podcast. Sometimes there's actually beer in the mug. There's beer or like whiskey or something in the mug because like at some point you have to do interviews at 11:30 at night, right?
Yeah.
So it depends where that person is in the world, right?
Yeah.
You can interview an actor who now has to go to France. So your 3 o'clock interview is going to be, way earlier in the morning. or you're gonna interview someone who's in Australia who is like another time zone, almost completely ahead of you. These are the trials and tribulations. But going back to Andrew Zimmern, huge interview. I was watching his shows. Like when you first have a child, you end up like sitting on the couch and watching TV and hit
favorite memories.
Yeah, I love to. I bought a 75-inch TV just for that. Thanks to Craig from Ottawa. He's my old work buddy. He said, you know what, go buy that 75-inch TV because you'll be on the couch with your child the whole time.
Holding so best memories.
Yeah. And so I start watching a show again on YouTube, and it's like 2-3 episodes in. I wonder what this guy's doing. Like, I wonder like if I could talk to this guy. So I hit him up. His publicists get back to me. You know, how many listeners do you have? This and that. Okay. When do you want to do it? These 2 days. Can we do this? All right. Confirm them this time. Like, holy shit, I booked him. I fucking booked him. Right? Like, holy shit. Right? And we get to the interview, and it was like perfect. It was mint. Right? It was like dead on. And it sounds so good. And then it ends up that my computer, my mic from my computer was picking everything up, and not this mic. In the end, I listened to it back many times, right? I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't sound good, right? So that's one regret. I wish I could redo that one.
But you released it anyways.
Yeah.
Did you go through that moment? I know what I would have thought. Did you think about re-recording everything?
Yes.
Just your voice.
Yes.
It would have been horrible though.
My God. But there's a lot of trials and tribulations everybody has. What about you? What's one that you can tell us?
I've been really lucky. Out of 300 episodes, I've been very, very lucky to have had good conversations with wonderful humans. I've mentioned before that when I connected with Dope Throne at Heavy Montreal that time when I was doing 19 interviews in 2 days, it was really, really hot. They had just played. They liked to party. They were a little bit under the influence, and we didn't connect as deeply as I would have liked to. They were a bit jokey, and I played it off as a joke as well. But it wasn't a deep conversation. So I would like to redo that one. Dustin from August Burns Red as well. My first Zoom Skype interview. It was a technical disaster. So I would like to redo that one as well. I lost about half of the episode because it just wasn't working. He was really cool and just willing to keep going and trying, but I would definitely like to have a conversation with him again, face to face, or now that I have a more steady internet setup in my house, now that I'm doing this as frequently as I do.
Or you know, you're doing the interview just like now, and somebody knocks on the door, just like what just happened to me now.
Definitely happens, and I editing is a beautiful thing. So,
oh my God, sometimes it'd be like people yelling in the background.
My kids. There's one episode where what interview is it? I think it's with Parika from Nervosa. My daughter, during the winter, I have 2 interview slots during the week. During the week, yes, that makes sense. During the week, I either do a weeknight or I do a Saturday at 2 p.m. for international artists. So I had booked Parika at 2 p.m. and during the winter it was cold and shit. We live in Canada, so my kids go in the front room and my wife takes care of them. And my daughter was having a fit, and on this mic you won't pick it up because the way that it's set up, the way that I have it, I cut everything when I'm not speaking in post, so you only hear my voice when I'm speaking. But if you listen to the YouTube, you can hear my daughter having a fit in the background, which is just the Zoom video.
Yeah. Like I have a noise gate on this thing and it stops it, but like I may be able to hear things like the shower running or whatever, but you can't hear it, right?
Yeah.
Because this mic is like kind of like, if it only picks up what's in front of it, but you may be able to hear a knock, right? That's and sometimes it's like, you know, they know that it's going on, and still
I love you. They love you, George.
What I know, I love them too. I love you too, man. You're pretty cool.
When you started your podcast, what is one thing or a few things that you wish you knew that you now know now?
Um, well, I wish I knew how to light the fucking set, man. I
Yeah, I'm
wish,
still struggling with that one. Yeah.
yeah. I wish I knew how to use a green screen. I tried doing it for a couple of shows, and then I was like, you know what, this is kind of stupid. Um, so I'm back to the old background. So those are two things. There's the SEO part behind the podcast thing. Just learning, like, it's more than just a show. It's like everything behind it, right? It's
The conversation's the easy part.
yeah, it's just the editing, and I wish I knew how much money it costs to start a podcast. Like, really start a podcast and invest your time in it. And I wish I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, because sometimes you get into some conversations and it's like, oh man, right? Like, it's you the guests can be good. Like, you and I are having a good conversation, but there's guests that are just like, all right, I don't know what to ask.
Still guarded.
Yeah. And so you have to somehow figure out whether you're gonna just bail on the conversation, just be okay, thanks a lot, let's get out of here. Ask them a general question. Like, okay, thanks, man, that's great. Or you're just gonna try and break down the wall and get into some more detail. Depends who they are. There's musicians out there that just don't want to talk to you, right? It's like, that's the frustrating part, because I want the hits and I want the crowd to listen to that, and I want them to be happy with it, right? And sometimes it's just not my fault that I can't get that out of them, right? So kudos to Elias from Nonpoint. Like, he's coming back on the show. Like, we have part 1 and part 2, right? Like we're gonna get more. We have a bit of a short one where we talk about the tour coming up, and then the next one will be about songwriting, which is absolutely crazy because he's a great songwriter. Like, stuff like that, right? I don't like having guests on 2 times, but if it's worth it, let's do it. Like, let's do it, right? It's so cool.
I always get more nervous when I have someone back on.
Yeah.
For some reason, I'm like, and I re-listen to the episode. I don't know if you do the same, just to make sure that I don't ask the same question.
Exactly, man. Well, it's been a good time, man. I really enjoyed being on your show. VOX&HOPS it's kind of a cool crossover, right? It's you're drinking the coffee brew, and I'm having the Joseph Bloor Joe Blo brew, man. This is actually pretty good. Should have bought a case of this. This is cool. This is good.
I'm stoked about it.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about collabs. I like making collabs. Now, when are you going to make a coffee? Why is there not a Meet Me for coffee? Why is there not a beer? Why is there not a hot sauce? Why is there not stuff that you love? How have you not made a coffee yet?
It was in the works. I wanted to make like a cannabis coffee, almost like,
yes,
it gives you a high and then a down kind of feel. A weed infused coffee, but just so much commitment, right? I want to do my own espresso blend. That was in the works as well. Now I kind of want to do a hot sauce blend or like a sauce blend or something like that. So it's all just like kind of organizing my thoughts, right? It's organizing, doing something, and that, like, I need to have the focus to actually go after. And I was at one point, but I think COVID kind of messed things up for me, to be honest, in that specific area. Because in the late winter, I was ready to rock it, right, with the coffee and take pre-orders and whatever. And what happened was, like, we got locked down, and that's it. Like, I can't go out, I can't do this, I can't do that, right? So I'm hoping for next year I'd have a coffee blend out there that's I would like to have like a name, the blends named after people who've been on the show, right?
That'd be so cool.
Yeah. But as it stands right now, like, we're just trying to figure out who the next guests are and what the next step is. Like, even like a coffee vodka or something like that would be really cool. So it's just taking the next step, and that's going to happen. And we just have to have the patience, right? The crowd is there. And I don't know how much they would support buying a coffee, but we also got to look at how inflation's really hit the coffee market as well, right? So There is a Sumatra blend being kind of worked with now. It's really good, super smooth. It's a dark roast. One of the best like dark roasts I've ever tasted. We are going to start off with like the regular paper bag packaging with the sticker, and then and we'll kind of graduate into
the printed bags.
Yeah, exactly. So keep an eye out for that. I also thought about doing a beer collab, but I don't even know where to start with some of that stuff. Right? It'd be pretty cool to do it, and there's so many things you could do, right? And you got to, like I said, set your mind to something and do it. And I really, appreciate that you've sent me glasses. Like even do that. That's a big feat in itself. And then even having like your own beer line or, your own hot sauce line or, it all takes work. Like even your merch, like you got an awesome hat, you got wicked shirts, and like, it's all you, man. Like when I see that, I see you, like, it's your brand.
Thank you. I am very stoked to have teamed up with Indie Merch to have my merchandise available there. Taking the merchandise out of my house was a beautiful step. That made me very, very fucking happy. So, and Cryptopsy's been working with Indie Merch for many years, so it was an easy decision. Indie Merch presented Brewtal North America, so that was an easy conversation to start getting a merch store up there. And I'm very, very happy to be working with them. And we have new stuff coming up in the fall for sure.
Gone are the days where you have boxes of CDs in your house.
I still have boxes of CDs in my house, but less of them, and no new boxes of CDs coming into my house. That is a decision that I have made. If you make a coffee, I will find a brewery in your area to make a collab, a Vox and Hops collab with your coffee, and it could be a three-way collab: a Meet Me for Coffee, Vox and Hops, and X Brewery.
Oh my God!
So when you're ready, let me know, and we will make this happen.
Let's do it. Yeah,
absolutely. That's an easy one. We could definitely make some stout with coffee. Delicious.
Yeah.
One last question. Doesn't happen very often because you have 3 young children. You tend to drink coffee. You are busy podcasting. But every once in a while, it happens to everyone. What is your hangover cure?
My hangover cure is another beer.
The most dangerous of solutions. I love it.
You know what? You got to have it to kill it, right? You can be hungover all like this. Always happens. This always happens. You just get some. Like I don't really get hungover too much, but a couple months ago, I went to some underground Portuguese club when it's like it was so forbidden. I forget. I thought it was in like some movie, right? It's like an underground club, and we're in lockdown. It's like forbidden, right?
Hell yeah.
Had a freaking massive party, drank brandy, had some dancing going, some beers, wine, whatever. And I threw up like 6 times that night, man. Like,
that's a good first step.
Yeah. So that happened. And then I was like messed up all day and like I was barely eating. And it's like, you know what? Like, let me just drink a beer. As soon as I had the beer, like I was freaking ready to rock. Soup and beer.
The secret is stopping after that beer.
Yeah.
That is the secret that many people don't follow.
What about you?
I really enjoy fruited sours, which is like a Berliner Weiss base. So it's like a sour base brew with it's just like tart. And then they add a bunch of fruit puree to it. So this is exactly how one of my collabs came to life. I interviewed this brewery called Brewski, which are one of Montreal's top breweries. So fucking cool. The brewer, Derek, is a wizard. I love him to death. And I pitched this to him after I had them on the podcast. I said, basically, like, this is my hangover cure. I drink a brew juice is what they call their fruited sours in the morning when I'm hungover with a cup of coffee. And we created Brewtal juice.
Wicked.
Which was an 8.5% fruited sour with like dark fruits, dark berries, dark maple syrup, and coffee from Zab Coffee, which was a company here in Montreal, coffee roasters that I love. They're a bit punk rock, a bit metal. I've been wanting to work with them forever, and I hit them up. I said, "Can we like make this like a 3-way collab?" They were in, and it was amazing. Brewtal juice. I hope they bring it back.
Brewtal juice.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's brew juice. It's
Juice. Their pig squeal and stuff. Holy shit, that was an awesome commercial.
George, thank you so much for taking the time, hanging out with me, talking about your life, talking about podcasting, talking about metal, talking about beer. I really had a great time with you, and I'm looking forward to hanging out in the flesh. Massive cheers to you, George. Hold on, massive. I got.
George is my metal name. This has been awesome, man. Like, it's been a cool crossover. You know, Vox and Hops is here to stay. I'm hoping that everybody who listens to my show, Eat for Coffee, goes on and checks out your show. I'm looking for a freaking beer collab, man. That sounds awesome. Let's just do that right off the bat.
Just make the coffee and I'll make it happen.
Let's do it.
Massive cheers, George. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Man, this was an epic crossover episode. I love hanging out with fellow podcasters. It's always fun to connect with people that live in the same world, that have the same obstacles as you have, that being the obstacle of enough time in a day to get everything done that we like to do when you do run a podcast and have a family and are a part of a band and are working full time. So I love hanging out with fellow podcasters, and I really had a blast with George. If you have not listened to his show, you absolutely should. It is a great podcast. Now, if you enjoyed this episode of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, I would encourage you to sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast mailing list. You could do that on my website, voxandhops.com. That's VOXandHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive one email a week containing all of the details of everything that has happened throughout the past week in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. Now, there's just so much going on in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, so please sign up to the mailing list, because I would hate for you to miss a single thing. The Vox and Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media. I hope you have a glorious weekend. I will be back next week with one episode, dropping on Tuesday. But until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.